While wandering the roads in the far northeasterly corner of the capital wasteland, we see a tower looming in the distance. As we get closer, we discover that this tower is the MDPL-13 power station. Since we're in Maryland, we can presume that MDPL stands for Maryland Power Line. The number 13 tells us that there are at least 13 of these power stations. At some point, we will have to sit down and discover them all. But this one is majestic. Sticking out of a large L-shaped concrete structure are 3 smokestacks. These smokestacks are so prominent that they can be easily seen from many places within the capital wasteland, making it a conspicuous landmark. On the ground just west of this power station is a grid of power transformers. These are still connected to power lines that snake throughout the capital wasteland. On the far western edge of this power station, we find a small brick structure. This leads to the power substation. The inside is just a small shack, and our compass coordinates change magically when we enter. We walked west to enter this substation, but as soon as we arrive, we are facing north. Against the northern, but really western wall, is a workbench. On top of the workbench, we find a bottle of Nuka-Cola Quantum, a bottle cap mine, and the schematics for a railway rifle. At last, we have the schematics we need for one of the coolest weapons in the game. We can try to use the weapons workbench to craft it, but we don't have all of the components we need. We need 1 crutch, 1 steam gauge assembly, a fission battery, and a pressure cooker. After this adventure, I went back to my megaton home and managed to scrounge up all of the components necessary. The weapon takes railroad spikes as ammunition. It does decent damage, but it has a unique effect of pinning enemy limbs and sometimes even heads to the wall. It makes a lovely train choo-choo noise upon firing. It is both a deadly and a fun weapon to use. Back at the substation, we find a terminal on a desk, and it's locked with a hard lock. But equipping a lab coat brings us up to 75, allowing us to hack into this terminal, which is connected to a nearby floor safe. Inside the safe, we just find randomized loot. Heading back outside, we can head over to the power plant. The L-shaped building has 2 entrances. Heading up some steps, we can find 2 garage doors, one of which is jammed shut, but another which leads inside. But instead of using this entrance, we'll go through the main door. As soon as we enter, we hear the sounds of feral ghouls in a neighboring room. Dogmeat freaks out, and we hear the door open behind us. Feral ghouls immediately attack. As I backed towards a terminal on a nearby desk, I saw that it was a turret control system. But before I could activate it, I got swarmed by feral ghouls and a glowing one. Now that ghoul mask from Tenpenny Tower would come in handy here. If we had it, we could turn this glowing one to our side, which would have made this encounter much less difficult. But Dogmeat is still in the other room attacking more feral ghouls, so I went over to the terminal and hacked it to see if I could gain control of the turret system. Taking a look at the system information, we see that the default targeting parameters are set to Robco Industries Trial User. This doesn't really tell us what the turret is set to target, so going on over to Activate Turret System, we get a message saying, "Warning, no targeting data. Please exercise caution." Presumably this means the turret will be attacking anything, including us, but also including those feral ghouls. Before entering the next room, we can loot some Nuka-Cola from the Nuka-Cola machine and open an Itotronic to find an assault rifle. Heading towards the door and peering around the corner, we do see more feral ghouls inside, but as soon as we peek through, we get attacked by machine gun fire. That doggone blasted turret that I just activated is on the ceiling right above us, and instead of actually helping us in this fight, it's completely ignoring the feral ghouls walking around and just attacking me. Well, that was a complete waste of time. Heading on down to the power station floor, we can finish off this last feral ghoul. Now, while walking around the factory floor, we're continually exposed to low doses of radiation. However, the big smokestacks that we saw sticking out of the factory gave me the impression that this was a coal power plant, not a nuclear one. I don't see a reactor offhand, but let's explore to see what we can find. Against the wall above the door where we came in, we see a big, intimidating face. Sadly, no plaques or anything, so we have no context as to whose face we see here. Exploring the floor, we see that these big brick steam or smokestacks are bolted right to the floor. There must be some sort of machinery underground that we don't have access to that is pushing the smoke up through the smokestacks. Against the western wall, we see a ramp. This leads up to that garage where we found the garage door from outside. In here, we find some lockers, many of which are overturned, and a very easy locked footlocker with some randomized loot inside. Aside from a first aid kit lying on the ground, there's not much in this room. But heading back out to the power plant floor, we do find a staircase against the eastern wall that we can use to climb up to the top. As we get to the top, we see that this catwalk snakes between all three of these smokestacks. Looking west, we see a door that leads to a room. Heading in, we find a whole bunch of nuclear waste barrels. Well, I think this answers our question. It's not a coal power plant. It must be a nuclear power plant. This would make sense given the Fallout world, but we don't find a reactor anywhere. If this is where they were storing some of their nuclear waste, where is the machinery that was creating the nuclear waste? On a desk near a terminal in this room is Fisto. No, not the lovely robot from Fallout New Vegas. This instead is a unique power fist, which deals much higher base damage than a standard power fist, at the cost of being slightly less durable. Compared to a regular power fist, it does 5 more base damage, has a 0.5% greater critical chance multiplier, does 5 more critical damage, costs 2 fewer action points, does 0.6 more damage per action point, but has 20 fewer durability. A pretty decent weapon for those who like power fists. The terminal on this desk sadly has no lore. Instead, it has an average lock, which we can use to unlock a nearby floor safe, which itself has some randomly generated loot. Well, after discovering these nuclear waste barrels in this room, that got me to wondering, where did nuclear power stations in the capital wasteland dispose of all of their nuclear waste? MDPL-13 here is certainly not the only power station. This area must have generated quite a lot of waste. Where did they put it all? Well, to find out, we head back down and go out that garage door back to the capital wasteland. As soon as we exit, we have a chance to trigger a random encounter. Depending upon our karma, we'll either fight Talon Company or regulators. After dispatching these hitmen, we can resume our search for some kind of nuclear waste disposal site. Our search brings us northeast of this power plant until we reach a flat irradiated plain. This is the Greener Pastures disposal site. We see the remnants of a fence that at one time protected this area from people casually walking in, but today this fence has all but melted away. Almost as soon as we enter, we find piles and piles of barrels of nuclear waste. To survive, we need to make sure that we either have a radiation suit equipped or a full suit of T-51 power armor, and it certainly doesn't hurt to use some RadAway. The radiation is so strong here that we can see it rising in clouds from the ground. We don't find many enemies here at all, and I think the reasons are obvious. It's too inhospitable even for mutated monsters. We do find a number of warning signs lining the perimeter of the disposal site, and even one right in the middle of the field. Danger. Very high radiation levels. Cleanup is in progress. The annual dose limit may be reached by standing here after only 0.5 seconds. Absolutely no entry without personal dosimeter and hazmat clearance. Stuck to the sign are what appear to be big lamps, headlamps or spotlights or something. Looks like before the war, the pre-war government was serious about keeping people away from this. These signs would have lit up at night. You could have seen them from a great distance. And we learned that the government was at least trying to clean this up, or at least telling the people that they were trying to clean it up. I wonder how long it took them to fully understand the dangers of nuclear waste. But of course, this dumping may not have been done by them. We learned from Fallout 4 that in Boston, at least, a company named Mass Fusion was in charge of much of the nuclear power that Bostonians used. That company, as I explored in a series of videos on the topic, unscrupulously dumped their toxic waste in lakes and other big disposal sites dotting the Commonwealth. They did this without the permission aggression of the United States government, which even led one worker to kill a government inspector who came to a mass fusion disposal site to inspect it. My bet is that this is a similar situation. Some of the local power companies must have been dumping their nuclear waste here without permission, and once the government discovered it, they gated it off, put up the signs, and tried to work on cleaning it up. But of course, they never succeeded because the bombs fell. The Greener Pastures disposal site must have been infamous in pre-war America, because we see a reference to this place made by construction workers in a terminal that we can read at the Sierra Madre Casino from Fallout New Vegas. In that terminal entry, when talking about the deadly fog that permeates the villa outside the casino, the construction worker says that if they don't take care of this fog, after a few years they might have another Greener Pastures on their hands. It seems like the toxicity of this Greener Pastures disposal site was well known. On the northern edge of this disposal site, we find a big shipping container, but it's unusual. It looks like it's been converted into some sort of home. On the outside, we see a big stop sign, and right in the middle of it, we find a door. This leads to a makeshift shack. As soon as we enter, we see a body lying on a bed against the wall. This is the body of a wasteland recluse. Don't tell me that this poor guy intentionally decided to live here. On his body, we find some dirty water and a radiation suit. We can loot this to repair our environmental suit that we got from Moira. A .32 caliber pistol lying on a personal footlocker near his head, which only contains wine. Ammunition on the ground, and then underneath his bed, we find a Rad-X and a copy of DC Journal of Internal Medicine, which permanently gives us 2 medicine. 3 if we have the comprehension perk. The nearby safe, however, is empty. Inside, we only find a large scorched book. In a tub nearby, we find a big stack of Radaway, this'll come in handy, and a couple vials of Rad-X. After exiting, we get attacked by wandering protectrons. This area of the Capital Wasteland has a lot of wandering protectrons, I've noticed, and they are all hostile. I had to kill 3 alone just by stepping out of this makeshift shelter. Back to the disposal site, we see a couple more items of interest. As we tiptoe amongst the nuclear barrels, we find another shipping container, this one with the lid open. Inside is the body of a scientist. She's wearing a radiation suit, which is going to come in handy for keeping our environmental suit repaired. Next to her corpse is a big book of science, which permanently gives us 2 points to science. We see the government in the process of cleaning this place up. Nearby, we find a military-issue vehicle filled with nuclear barrels. But I could be wrong. Are they picking up, or were they dropping off? Heading west from this point, against a rocky hillside, we find a big concrete structure. This was the disposal site office. Inside, the compass markers are again wrong. We walked west to enter this door, but as soon as we enter, our compass bearing says we're headed south. Aside from a couple of red roaches in here, we find no enemies. But the biggest thing of note is sitting on a desk in the middle of the room next to a terminal is the Agility Bobblehead. You found a Vault-Tec limited edition bobblehead. The inscription on the base reads, "Never be afraid to dodge the sensitive issues." Looting this bobblehead increases our agility by 1. The terminal here does not have lore. It's locked with an average lock, but hacking it simply gives us the option to loot the nearby floor safe. Inside, we find a bunch of randomized loot, and then on the ground near to a second desk is another Nuka-Cola Quantum. Remember, we need to save these and not drink them so that we can complete the Nuka-Cola challenge given to us by Sierra Petrovita. Next to a big tool cabinet is another workbench where we find yet another bottle cap mine. Nearby, we find a dozen boxes stacked on top of each other where we have a chance to get all sorts of randomized loot. And that is the full story of the Greener Pastures disposal site. What are your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen? Do you believe that the MDPL-13 power station was truly a nuclear power station, even though it looks like a coal power plant? Do you believe that it's likely that Maryland power companies dumped their nuclear waste on public land, much like mass fusion did in the Commonwealth? Or do you think that this maybe hints at something larger, that maybe even the US government itself was dumping nuclear waste here, only pretending that they were cleaning it up? And are you interested in learning more about the infrastructure of the Capital Wasteland? There are at least half a dozen other power plants that we can explore, and I'd love to explore them all in one big video for you. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I read all of your comments and I use your comments as inspiration for future videos. I've got a t-shirt shop, folks. That's right, if you would like an Oxhorn or a Fallout themed shirt, you can find a link to my shop in the description below. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Patreon subscribers gain access to a private channel on my Discord server, as well as a bunch of other cool Oxhorn perks. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.